meeting to order. Okay, so it is 6:03, March 17th, 2022. I call this meeting of the Wellfleet Selectboard to order in accordance with the temporary suspension and enhancement of the open meeting law as allowed by the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first order of business is open session public comments. Public comments must be brief and the board will not deliberate or, yeah, we all know the drill. It's just us. Nobody else is on right now. So do you have any, Helen?
No, you're right. It's lonely.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to go to the town administrator interview process. And just so the board's clear, we're not going to discuss any of the questions that we might have picked tonight. It's best if the candidates do not know those ahead of time. So please do not bring up any questions that you might have submitted. But otherwise, so I'd like to ask Rick White to kind of run us through, I guess, how you would prefer to run the interview process.
Well, I'm thinking that the best thing to do is have the chair introduce the meeting, give a brief synopsis of the process, thank the screening committee, and identifying the three people that you're going to interview at the meeting. Then explain, bring up the first candidate, explain to the community who the first candidate is, and have the chair ask the first question. And then rotate around from selectman to selectman, asking one question so that each selectman has an opportunity to engage and each selectman has an opportunity to observe. After each question, there's an opportunity for follow-up question. An answer may give you an incentive to follow up and ask a question. You may not understand what was said. You may want to have the candidate tease out the answer, or it may encourage you to think of something that you want to ask the candidate. There's no rhyme or reason to follow-up questions. Once the board goes through the rotation once, it will go through it again till 10 questions are asked and the interview's over. And then you go to the second candidate and the third candidate. My understanding is that you'd like the night to sleep on your perceptions and your observations of the candidates. And then you're going to have a Zoom meeting the next day to determine if you can name a preferred candidate. My preference is for you to identify a preferred candidate, especially if you see that both people are capable or three people are capable of doing the job, so that when you're into negotiations with your preferred candidate, if it doesn't work out, you have an opportunity to go back to the second candidate or the third candidate, if you're willing. And if you want to negotiate a contract if the first opportunity doesn't work out. I don't think that will happen in this case, but you just never know. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. And then, I don't know, are there questions from Helen?
Yeah, two questions. Do we also, when we're discussing this among ourselves, right? Not when we're interviewing. Wait a minute, when are we going to meet to discuss and vote on what our first, second, and third choices are?
That's Tuesday at 1, I believe.
Yeah, but when are we interviewing the candidates?
We're interviewing the candidates on Monday.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at my calendar. I'm not completely brain dead. So we should also be looking at second and third choices possibly, Richard. That's my first question.
My preference is for you to say you have a preferred candidate,
Yes, but,
identified on the preferred candidate.
and then,
If you can't reach an agreement, if you have consensus among the board to go to the second candidate, to go there.
okay, but we should think about that too. My second question is actually more tactically important. So as at least I know, some of us know, when you're doing this, the candidates are not all sitting and waiting they're all sitting and waiting in separate spaces at the COA or
No.
outdoors or whatever.
No.
They can't be in the same room.
They're not going to be. So they'll be with town staff before they're with us.
Okay,
And then,
that's not my question.
yep.
My question is this. Town staff will make sure they're not watching the Zoom on their cell phones, correct? Because that would give the second and third interviews a definite advantage, and that can happen. So staff will say, you know, you can't do this, right? There'll be somebody sitting with them, correct?
That'll be me, Helen.
Okay, good, thank you. This is not my first merry-go-round with this, so that's the reason I'm asking these questions. Thank you.
All three of these candidates have integrity, and they've been told to separate themselves and not to look ahead, and I trust them.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure of that. Thank you.
Okay, and then I guess the other thing is that you want about 10 questions?
Usually about 10 questions with follow-up fits in an hour interview.
Okay,
Any more, you're really pushing it. And it's very important that at least your first conversations with the candidates, that you ask the same questions to protect yourself for any legal liability, and so that you have a common platform to evaluate the candidates.
okay. So I think we have more than that currently. How many questions are we at?
I think, well, I just got something from Helen before the meeting and I haven't looked at it, but my sense of it is she identified 3. Pardon me?
May I, Ryan?
Don't discuss your actual questions,
Of
please.
course not. Of course not.
Yep.
I also apologized. There was an emergency event. So anyway, I apologize to Richard for sending them so late.
Okay.
What I indicated were the ones that I feel should definitely be asked, but that's just me. So if we're going to winnow this down to roughly 10, you know, we'll see how it goes. I mean, the follow-up questions, you know, can take time and they may answer other questions. But how do we decide which questions not to ask? Because there are about 50 questions here. And only a few of them do I personally feel are essential, but that's just me, you know?
So this is what I was gonna offer, and I haven't really run this by anybody yet. So I guess, to be fair, I was gonna try to ask Rebecca roughly. I don't know if that's putting you on the spot too much to work with Rick White in terms of winnowing it down to 10 questions, because I think we're at 17 right now, somewhere around there.
I can do that. I can work with them on
Okay.
that.
And that way it's fair, so, you know, and none of the questions are identified who's asking them either, so.
Do you,
I think you should all have a master list of the questions.
Yep,
And in parentheses next to the question, it should identify who's going to ask it.
yeah, I mean, in terms of the questions that were submitted to you by the board, none of them are identified who's asked for that question.
Oh, no, I can do that with Rebecca.
Yep. I would just ask Rebecca and you to work on narrowing it down to 10, so that we can go in and yeah. Then yeah, if that does that make sense to the rest of the board?
Well, I would think that Rebecca and certainly Rick, who's been doing it a lot, would both be up for it. But I'm wondering, like, what happens if, I mean, I've done this a lot now, but I'm still ready to learn. I'll just send my responses to the questions to you, Rebecca, also. And there are certain questions that I think just don't obtain here and that will have been included in the application material. So I don't want to take up time in an in-person interview asking the applicants to go over things that we already know. You know, there's typically a cover letter and there's quite a lot of information in the cover letters. And of course, people
Yep.
have hold on.
So Helen, you're starting to talk about specific questions or what might or might not be asked.
Yeah, I am, because
Yeah, no, which we're not going to do tonight.
so when are we going to do it, Ryan? We're handing this to two able people who will.
Okay. I said we weren't going to discuss it, so we can't discuss what questions may or may not be asked. You're muted, Helen, because, yeah. Okay, Mike?
Yeah, it's my understanding that we were just supposed to submit 3 questions that we thought were pertinent.
Yep.
And then that's what's being widowed down. So unless a select board member wants to veto what other people think are important, it really doesn't matter what's on the list that we didn't select. So, I picked 2 questions off the list and I submitted 1 question of my own that I wanted to submit, and that's it. So I don't understand why we can't just have Rebecca and Richard just narrow it down to 10. And I don't know if it goes, if we have 17 questions, there's 5 of us. So if we each ask 3 questions, it should be 15. Is there no overlap or something?
There's a little overlap.
Okay. So it should get lower than 15 anyways. And then, yeah, I just trust you guys to go ahead and narrow it down. And as long as I feel like I know what questions I'm going to ask before we get to the interview, I'm fine with that.
Yep. John?
I guess I'm just not entirely clear. I mean, I submitted 3 specific questions. Will I be able to ask any of those, or is that going to be decided ahead of time?
We have to have a list of 10. So I don't know. It's
And also,
What I propose is that if you responded and gave us 3 questions, tomorrow Rebecca and I will go through them, determine what 10 we think are best, and we will circle back to each one of you and say, we eliminated this one. Is that okay with you?
oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
And that way we will have 10.
And we'll have some input in that.
And you'll have, no, I really wanted to ask that question, get rid of this one instead. That way, everybody will have some ownership of the process. Everybody will have an opportunity to ask something that's important to them. And, we can go from there.
Okay.
Yep. I think that's the fairest way to do it. So Rebecca?
I was just gonna say, maybe you guys could send an email with 1 out of your 3 that you really want to see on the list. 1 out of all of
Yeah,
them.
I mean,
That way
that
there
might
we
save us
know.
stuff.
Yeah, that'll save a step. Then Rick and I going back and forth tomorrow, telling you we eliminated this one and that, and then, we don't have a lot of time to get the list together. So if you guys could just send an email after the meeting, identifying 1 out of your list that you really want to be on there.
If
I don't know how you feel about that, but
if you have the time, I wouldn't mind some input from you on the questions which I submitted as to which one you think.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I mean, I think I have an idea what I think is most pertinent, but I'd rather hear that from you as well. So, yeah, that's a good that makes sense. Sure.
Are there any other questions for the board? Okay, so, and just so you're aware, the candidates will be, coming from town hall, to the COA. So there might be, a break in between, different candidates based on, but yeah.
I don't
All right.
have a 4 o'clock.
Mike?
Yeah, just a question about reaching out to select committee members prior to interviews and stuff like that. I just guess I'm wondering what's appropriate on that level. What is it that we are allowed to know coming into this, or allowed to ask any select committee members that we talked to that were involved in the initial interview process? I guess I'm a little unclear because some of it's executive and that's not been released, and I'm not sure exactly where the line is on that.
Well,
Rick?
I encourage you to talk to the chair and any member that you'd like, but I think it's important that you go through the chair first. Sometime tomorrow, I'm proofreading the background and reference checks. I was telling Ryan, in the last couple of days, I've talked to 45 people. And for an introvert, I'm totally exhausted and need a rest. But the report's done. I just need to proofread it, so there's nothing embarrassing, not about the candidates, but about my writing. But you should get that tomorrow. It's a fairly detailed 10-page report. So I encourage you to spend some time looking at it over the weekend. So you'll have that. And, if you reach out to Bruce and then work your way through, I think that's appropriate.
So this is the executive summary, basically?
These are references. This is a confidential
references.
reference report and background report.
Okay,
Not to be shared with anybody, not to be made public.
sure.
But
Okay.
it's what we do, and it gives you a sense of what the references said. Just so you know, for background, we contact 3 supervisors, an auditor that audits the financial books, 3 employees that they've worked with, one of which doesn't work for them directly now, the town council, a vendor that they've done business with, the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, 2 community activists. We asked for 1 reporter, but none of the reporters will talk to us because they see it as a conflict of interest, and at least 5 selectmen members. And we talked to just about all of them. And then also, we search through the community of people we know, and we talk to people not on the list. And those are all combined into a synthesis of the feedback that we've received about each of the candidates.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify. The finalists' applications and resumes, we are going to receive when? With
We've
our
already reviewed them.
We have? Okay. I read quite a few emails regarding this, but I guess I didn't see that one. There was a computer issue on this laptop, not in the other computer though, and I went through my email. I'll go back.
Yeah, no, Rick, so Rick, I think she's talking about the report that you're just speaking about.
No,
Well-
actually, I'm not. I'm looking for, so my
Bruce
understanding,
Barron's sent a report
it's in Bruce's. Okay,
and
sorry.
the resumes.
Because guess what? Bruce just called me. So I didn't read his email because I thought it covered that. That's the explanation. I thought I was being very thorough. So, but the point is, we can't reveal anything about those applicants' names or what's in the resumes until we have a meeting,
The
correct?
applicants' names are public now.
That's-
Everything is public.
Okay. And it's also my understanding, having done this in the past, that if we wanted to, and I'm not saying I want to, we could go in town hall and very carefully and secretly, in a confidential way, read the applicants that weren't recommended if we felt like it, all those many,
Yes.
Yes, that's in the memo from Bruce.
Okay. My problem was that I thought he covered everything when he talked with me, which he had another reason to call me. Anyway, okay. So those questions are answered. I will send in my 3 questions to you, Becky, and you, Rick,
Thank
and
you.
you'll get them right away. And in the meantime, I sent you like a kind of go over for all the questions you sent. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So is there any other questions or are we good for tonight?
You guys have done well.
All right. Well, thank
Good
you.
job.
And Ryan?
Yep.
So when do we get the packet for the meeting on Monday? Tomorrow?
I mean,
Yeah. Tomorrow.
mean-
Electronically, you've already received the screening committee's report, which
Yep.
includes the questions that they asked and the resumes.
Yes, but electronically, not on paper. I was asking her kind of in-house, when do we get the pieces of paper in the office? That's all I was asking. Rebecca will put them in the office, I assume. Thank you.
okay. Can you, whether
Yes.
Rebecca's print that and put that in?
I can do that.
Okay. All right. So with that, oh,
We'll expect that 10-page report.
Tomorrow in the morning. I just have to proofread it and I'm spent, and if I do it now, I'll make a mistake.
okay. And okay. All right. So with that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
All right. Well, good
Bye
night,
bye,
all.
everybody.
Good
See you
night.
Monday.
Nice job.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rebecca. I mean, Becky and Rebecca.